folks, see those little black boxes? Those are telephones. I'm gonna let you on a little secret about these telephones. They're not going to
Dialyn
themselves. So you listen to me, and you listen well. Are you wanting a new stunner? Good. Pick up the phone and start.
Dialyn.
Are you needing an insane buffer? Pick up the phone and start.
Dialyn.
I want you to deal with your deadly assaults and shields by pulling.
Dialyn.
Well, folks, with Dialyn's release actually comes new information and a shakeup to the entire game. I swear, Dialyn's effects on the meta might be irreversible because she's brought upon a change to the game that affects everyone she teams up with. Welcome to the full Dialyn guide, where we now have compiled a ton more information on Dialyn, statistics on her runs, as well as a bunch more conclusions on how she's able to impact your team and your builds, and of course your runs. It's no secret that if you've been following me or any other CC, that Dialyn is actually insanely strong, but let's key in on why she actually is one of the most meta relevant characters we might be getting for a long time, and why she could actually be the secret to bringing back one of the most slept on units in the entire game. First, if you haven't watched my early access guide and impressions, let's review the kit, because here we'll be able to highlight more things that are important for the development of Dialyn. Yet if you've already seen the guide, make sure you guys skip over to the timestamp here. This information will be more relevant for you. Let's begin with her novel of a core passive, the 5-star Service Hotline. When Dialyn is in combat, her crit rate will actually grant her extra impact based on 1% crit rate after 50% for 2 points of impact up to 100. So if you want to be perfect, you can get 100 crit rate for Dialyn, and that would grant you 100 impact. Don't worry, unlike every villain in Zenless Zone Zero, you probably don't have daddy issues or perfection paralysis. Or at least you don't have both at the same time. Regardless, it's quite unnecessary to reach 100 crit rate, and actually can prevent you from investing into other offensive stats that will matter down the road. To give you a little spoiler before the build section, I've conferred with a few creators that 90% crit rate should be the top number to get, much like how we go up to 90% for Trigger. Yet there's a bit more that meets the eye when it comes to the thresholds of crit rate and impact, so we'll revisit that more in depth later. Next is our second part of her core ability that is tied to your EX specials. Your original EX special skill is called Rock. This core ability allows you to convert those specials, if you have enough energy that is, to scissors and then to paper. All this costs us 75 energy total, and you have an 8-second window between each to do so. So try to make sure that you're well above the halfway point on your meter if you're eyeballing your energy. I know in the heat of battle it's easier said than done, yet note that you can actually separate the attacks, which is super nice considering bosses can get extra aggro. The following effect of performing the paper attack will allow you to unlock Dialyn's greatest contribution, her debuff that applies to the enemy called the Malicious Complaint. This will grant your next stun window an extra 2 seconds and an additional 38% stun damage multiplier at max core. This pretty much is a lighter and trigger buff combined into one ability, and really pushes you to get at least one whole rock, paper, scissors combo out during the load up pre-stun period. And just like Lightning McQueen in Cars 3, the other stunners seem to be fading. They're fading fast. Yeah, what is the bar over here, Josh? You mentioned 2 whole core abilities already, but what is this? Well, let's move to the third core ability called the Positive Reviews. These are stacks that you can obtain by 2 ways. One, by passively earning them through time, 0.6 positive reviews per second, which I don't know how we can have a fraction of a positive review, but who am I to judge? She's the one that has the best record of Krampus, after all. Then, after using each level of your EX specials, rock, paper, scissors, you can gain 7.5 positive review stacks per ability, totaling up to 22.5 points of review. Bro, seriously, why are each ability dealing fractions of a review? Dude, this is wacky. The total stacks you can accumulate is 120, which I would never suggest you getting that high because you'll be wanting to consume them for your stun window. Let's move on. Now, with at least 90 positive reviews, you can obtain this ability to alter a character's in-stun chain attack and upgrade it to their ultimate. This is the gimmick that Dialyn brings to the table that shakes up the entire game. We'll go through more in the combat portion down the road, but even if you're a Green, Gerald, or Gertrude, you can generally see how this is a net benefit to your overall damage, which is actually super sick. This means we've essentially guaranteed 2 ults for most characters Dialyn interacts with, and more specifically, this benefiting your DPS characters. Yet that's not all for this ability, folks, because if you were to proc this ability with her own chain attack, EX Special Get Lost, which can be activated via her basic charge attack, or Quick Assist, you only spend 60 out of said 90 points. note that you'll still need 90 points to get to the threshold to use this ability. Then when in the stun window and holding 90 stacks, you can actually have the opportunity to force this ability. Say you didn't start the stun window with said abilities, you can use the EX special Get Lost to manually trigger the chain window to convert the next character's chain into an ult, like so. And after all that, as long as you use this ability, you can obtain a stack of 1 customer complaint. This stack will allow you to back quick assist to the character behind in the rotation, which normally should be your front runner or DPS character. This ability should generally be used to maintain assist abilities and passives, for example, the Astro Voice, as I mentioned in my previous guide. Most folks will barely make use of this ability during the high intensity stun windows, so don't worry about it too much since you'll be saving the EX special Get Lost ability. So let's take a pit stop. Why is this Dialyn ability so particularly strong? Well, we actually have to look at its economy. If you have Jufufu, who provides 300 decibels when the character ults and a 1000 extra in the bank, you can essentially get over a third of the way to your next ult. Well, Dialyn actually says screw that. If I'm giving you something, I'm giving you a whole ult. Which means that she's basically gifting the character 3000 decibels per stun window. So now with those numbers, you can see how broken this ability actually is. After that, we move on to the additional core ability that requires an attacker and rupture character to be on the team with her. This allows Dialyn to buff her attacks by first giving her a flat 50% crit damage increase to her EX special attacks. Literally, why does she have this? I think Hoyoverse wanted her to be a DPS character before Stunner. Then when she uses an EX special or ult, you gain a new passive status called the Overwhelmingly Positive effect, granting you 40% damage increase for the entire team for 15 seconds. Yet reprocs of this ability will allow you to increase the timer for 10 seconds as long as you're under 35 seconds. So let's say you were to use your 3 EX specials to get to 35 seconds, which it takes time to use that ability, so as seen in this example, we're getting down to around 33. Then using an ultimate, we can bump this all the way up to 40 plus seconds, meaning as long as you're doing something with Dialyn's main kit, you should be at 100% uptime of this buff. Then after, as I mentioned with a damage buff before, her EX specials gain an additional bonus based on the character that came before her. So if it's an attacker, then the EX special bonus will be 320% worth of the attacker's attack, and if it were rupture, it's 400% of their sheer force. And just to give you all the edge case examples, if you do manage to have an attack and rupture agent on the same team, it will depend on the previous character that was on said field before Dialyn rotates on, notified by the icons of switching, not the on-field presence. And I'll be straight up honest, this is a majority of how Dialyn works. We've gone through her EX specials and ults within the context of her core ability, and those are the things you'll be using most. Outside of the assists, that is to gain more days, decibels, and energy. Yet she also does have a somewhat useful basic, which just does a little bit more damage. And after using the ult, assist, or dodge, you can actually flow into the 4th attack of the basic, like so. Make sure to take a small breather before moving on, because these bonuses were a lot. Let Teacher Josh review for you. First is the additional core passive that will activate with the first contact of your enemy with your EX special, giving you the overwhelmingly positive effect. Then will be the malicious complaint if you tag the opponent with your last of your 3 EX specials, rock, paper, scissors, and finally, the positive reviews that allow you to convert your chains to ults of your choosing pick. These bonuses are the bread and butter of Dialyn, your Zelda Triforce, if you will. Yet, how can we make those other parts of her kit truly potent, you may ask? Well, we're going to have to get under the hood with Dialyn's build breakdown. Mechanic Josh over here, and this is the portion where we are going to be spending the majority of time because, as I mentioned earlier in this video, Dialyn's build is not cookie cutter. There are so many nuances between 2 and 4 set bonuses, picks on 4 and 6 slot, and W engine choices that all cascade to making Dialyn one of the most play-by-play units we've ever had to build. So let's start off by re-establishing the core ability that grants Dialyn 2 impact per 1% crit rate from 50%. This means that at a max you can get 100 impact for 100 crit rate. Yet, how do we even get her crit rate that high? Let's jump straight into her W engine that grants 24% crit rate, 5% from innate crit rate, 14.4% from her core upgrades, and a potential 24 from your 4 slot, totaling up to 67 Factoring in crit rate, substats, and other set bonuses, you can easily shoot yourself up to 80 to 90% as honestly far as you want to take it. The Yesterday's Call is a unit of a W engine that not only pushes out a strong amount of crit needed for the core skill, but also provides energy regen of 1.5 per second, which is slightly under having ER on the 6th slot, yet stronger than having the 2-set bonus of ER, whether that's Swing Jazz or the new Moonlight Lullaby. And just before we hop into the drive disc, y'all must be wondering about the other budget options. Well, as mentioned in my prior video, the Hellfire's gear is a solid W engine option that essentially provides the same stuff. Steamed Oven comes in to round us off with the A rank FTP options, yet Wenjins, like the other standard S rank, the Restrained, you get okay days, yet the lack of other bonuses to crit and energy make this option fall a bit short. Yet what about having just crit rate, Josh? Could I just slide in another option that grants me crit to convert? Well, yes, technically. Even energy Wenjin options have strong impact potential because of the core. Yet one thing that doesn't show up on the stat sheet that I've been trying to hammer down is the energy. Without your Wenjin and more pure impact and crit investments, without ER, you're going to find yourself in the middle and tail end of your runs without the proper energy needed to utilize her full kit. So instead of focusing on just pure stat Wenjins like the Blazing Laurel, Ice Jade Teapot, heck, even the crit option in Spectral Jays, it's just better to hop back into an option like the Hellfires or even Steamed Oven because the consistency of the buff will trump the need for more days. Well, because she already has a good amount. And if you're really trying to force the crit rate, just flip over to the energy 6 slot and 2-piece energy, and that should help you compensate for the lack of energy regeneration. Yeah, all this to say, there is a strong formula leading us to push for around 80 to 90% crit rate, with which the signature makes it possible, yet we'll need ways in order to supplement energy generation without it, which we'll go through next. And whoa, what about what you said early in your previous video, Josh? You mentioned that straight impact would be a viable option. Comparing the two, I must concede that energy regen on 6 slot is the more sensible option here. As most battles, you'll be able to hit an extra 2 or even full 3 stacked EX special combo during the pre-stun window versus running the more conventional impact. See, Dialyn's base impact is actually one of the lowest, so by percentage-wise of having the 18% from the 6 slot actually nets less compared to just feeding in crit rate per point of impact. And since there are only so many ways to get initial impact, yet so many ways to invest in the crit rate, it just makes it the option of least resistance, making it much more attainable for the average player. And not only that, because if you have high crit rate, you can more consistently hit those crit damage numbers that Dialyn and hopefully your other support will be able to supplement for some nasty sub-TPS numbers. Phew! So, with all that in mind, let's move to the drive discs to round out our university dissertation on Dialyn. For the 4 set, she wants King of the Summit for overall team crit damage contribution. 2 slot, you can prioritize crit rate, yet other builds as mentioned before, ER can be king or even just straight impact via the Shockstar Disco. Then with the main slots for 4, 5, and 6, you'll want crit rate up to 80 plus and max 90. And when I mean by 80 plus, you'll want to get to as close as around 85 ideally. Then with the 5 slot, physical and pen have proven very strong. Unless you have a pen buffer, then attack will be the best option. Just go physical or change it depending on the opposite of what your support provides. Then the 6 slot will be a majority energy regen, unless you want to be cheeky like me and run impact, which again can be viable but under much tighter conditions. Here are the updated builds and farm guides for Dialyn if you haven't already pre-farmed. Make sure to catch these infographics over on our Twitter, our community Discord, as well as our community YouTube posts. And hey, come check out our Twitch as we'll be doing a lot more live testing, Q&As, reviews, giveaways, and more, especially since there's so much to Dialyn that we still need to test. But let's move along here. Now, let's get to the team suggestions. And boy, a ton of power creep haters are not going to like this one. So as far as the bonuses that Dialyn provides, unfortunately she turns out to be just as strong a stunner as most of the other stunners in the cast. Yet she provides some of the best overall buffs as a stunner and also makes use of the indirect buffs from the support to overall increase the total team production of most, if not all, the teams she can participate in by 5 to at most up to 10 or 12%. And a single team where she can actually almost double the damage. The mix of the chain to ult gimmick baked in with the core bonuses that are easily accessible, Dialyn is just straight up one of the best investments we've seen outside of the big three supports. That's how good she goddamn is. But let's get straight into some team showcases to show you exactly why. Here is a team with Jshoea, Lucia, and her previous best stunner Fu, and here's the same comp with Dialyn. Each stun, you are getting an extra ult if you have enough ER in the build. With the extra damage, even with my stock build on these test accounts, I am able to get a few extra hundreds, if not thousands of free points just based on the extra damage multipliers between a chain and ult. And for most characters outside of Evelynn, you don't need to exactly chain before anything. Funny enough, let's actually bring up Evelynn, because in order for her to adapt, she actually drops her more conventional builds of Woodpecker and Hormone Punk, ones that she's been using for quite some time, in favor of Puffer Electro. This drive disc has not been seen in a hot minute, so let's catch y'all up to speed. This drive grants you 8% pen ratio on the 2-set bonus, which on a team that barely has any, it actually is quite the good thing. Yet grants a straight 20% ult damage increase at the 4 slot and confirms a 15% attack bonus every single time you ult, aka every single stun. This turns out to be Evelynn's most consistent buff for the average player, much like how myself and other CCs have mentioned before that Moonlight Lullaby being almost 100% uptime versus the Astro Voice's slightly greater potency turns out to be a net positive in DPS. The Hormone Punk only lasts for 10 seconds, yet the Puffer Electro will proc immediately after you ult, which should be the first action in your stun window. This means you'll essentially have the full stun window with the attack buffs, comparatively to the Hormone or Woodpecker that would wane out after the first 3 or 4 chains. And next, well, we visited a Rupture comp, we visited an Attacker comp, we've generally gone the spread. Yet, Josh, you earlier hinted at a comp that almost doubled in production just because Dialyn is on the team. Now, this is not for the weary of heart, and certainly not obtainable by everyone's standards, because it is a comp that male lovers exclusively will actually appreciate. In comes the M2 Hugo and Dialyn combo. For the folks who are a bit hesitant, let me ease your guys' anxieties by saying that already at M0, does Dialyn still provide a DPS increase over the Doggo Butler, but only by a few percentage points. However, the real kicker comes in with the M2. See, with Hugo's Mindscapes, they are focused on allowing him more opportunities to totalize. For this instance at the M2, you can get 1 extra charge of totalize by using the ult, which will still hit a big nuke of a totalize, yet won't end the stun window, as totalizes usually do, allowing you to EX special. Now, how about let's factor in the ability for Hugo Chain into Dialyn, who forces the ult with her EX special get lost. Then you can either ult or EX, which the language in the text says that when you ult, it never says that it's only usable once. So in essence, you can see now that at peak form, we can actually ult twice and EX special once for a 3 totalized stun window, which technically only happens every other rotation, but that's 3 totalizes, whereas you're barely getting 2 before. This totaling up to whopping tens of percentages of damage increase for the max stun window. Absolutely diabolical. And yes, this means that Dialyn will be passed around a lot. So here are my favorite teams for Dialyn. Yet as well, let's not forget the less noteworthy but viable budget options for those who are newer to the scene or who haven't had the opportunity to obtain the highlighted DPS characters above. Dialyn brings so much to the table, it's absolutely ridiculous. Whether you're an attacker or Rupture, she's probably going to end up being the best stunner in almost every team comp. Yet we've only been talking about Dialyn at M0W1. What if we were to go further beyond? Even though she's a short stack, those who are ready to invest into her vertically, let's jump into Mindscapes and see what they can offer, as I personally am impressed at how strong these are and the fun combos of the M4 and M6. Again, before we jump into this segment, I want to preface that I'm not condoning or asking y'all to push for higher Mindscapes. M0 and budget options for a stunner character like Dialyn is arguably great already and will get the job done, and is by no means bound to the engine. However good crit rate and ER bonuses are, you can still supplement that just through stats and smart investments in your drives. But let's begin with M1, and Dialyn gets a positive review accumulation bonus of 16% per rock, paper, scissors, upping that to 26 total stacks for your 3 combo EX special, which arguably doesn't seem like much, but factoring in that you don't have have to string them all together, this actually comes in clutch to much smoother transition you into the stun window with over 90 review stacks. Almost every single time, unless you're just not using her. And as a cherry on top, you get 15% all attribute res down when characters are under the overwhelmingly positive status effect from the additional passive. A cheeky bonus that many modern day characters have been receiving. Next is the M2, which ups the potency of the malicious complaint debuff against enemies with an increase of 20% stun damage multiplier, upping the total number to 50%. Then all units affected by the debuff will also just flat out get a 15% increased damage multiplier put on them. This is a pure number pusher and does not affect the rotations of your team whatsoever, so grab this if you're realistically just pushing for higher Mindscapes. M3 and M5 are classically the skill increases, yet these can be quite important as the days with the EX specials increases, so you might consider higher investment teams, then rotate off on impact investments altogether, and to just go for energy or offense for slightly more damage alongside the days. But that's for the consideration of the super high investor. M4 is a part 1 of a Mindscape combo which grants you 500 attack when under the overwhelmingly positive stat, and also a head start on energy with 20 extra energy at the start of battle, allowing you to much closer hit that EX special and increase your out of stun damage multiplier and get to a potential ult prior to your first stun window. It's such a sleeper Mindscape bonus that doesn't directly show up on the stat sheet, making it quite the luxury to have. And I said the M4 was a part of a combo, let's wrap it up with the M6. The M6 turns Dialyn into a bona fide sub-DPS, this allowing Dialyn to gain an effect called the Aftertone. When an ally uses the chain to ult conversion from Dialyn's core passive, after such, she gains 12 instances of attacks that can be fired off-field and will deal physical strikes up to 480% of her attack for any instance of a landed attack. The percentage is based off of her final attack, by the way, so not only does the M4 factor in, but buffs from other supports like Jshoea, Jshoea, or Lucy will all help to increase this damage as well, which makes this a nice extra burst of damage opportunity within the stun window, which from the M2 gets a total 65% overall damage bonus. Man, she is nuts. And just to wrap up the use case of this ability, you can refresh this at any time you use the core ability to convert your allies' attacks to ults, and these stacks will essentially last forever until used or refreshed. Overall, Dialyn has become one of the most complete characters we've seen in their role in a while. And the vertical investments even justifies itself, unlike some others who have lacking M4s and M6s. As we've made the conclusion earlier, a bunch of Dialyn still turns out to be a step ahead of most of her competition. And since we haven't gotten such an impactful, pun intended, stunner in a while, my suggestion, whole score turns out to be S tier, which I haven't given out one of these in a while. She will be strong for many of your current offensive characters and will stay strong with the already few anticipated characters just around the corner. Yet the arguments of her being overtuned are frankly quite warranted. Yet, unlike the Jshoeas of the world, for when introduced, increase the anomaly buildup of everything in the game, I don't believe here we are seeing the same effect with Dialyn's stun potency. Mainly just a damage increase because of her insane buffs, so hopefully that puts things into perspective. But that will conclude the Dialyn full access guide and review. Did you learn something new that you didn't know before? Comment below, especially for the build segment. I must admit, I wasn't fully wrong, but I definitely was a little bit off track. We always try to strive to give y'all the best information as possible, so thank you so much for still putting your belief and support in me. I've been having so much fun making guides, doing collabs, podcasts, and other fun events around ZZ, and I hope you'll continue to stick around. It's your boy Josh, and I hope you're dialed in for Dialed In, and we'll see you in the hollows, stunning your ethereal opponents in no time. Thanks so much for watching.